Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Navigating Now. This is episode 280, entitled How to Design the Org of the Future. The organizations that thrive won't be the ones that just moved fastest. They'll be the ones that combined speed with intention. Today, we're going to be joined by Trellis Usher, who is the CEO of Nova Health Labs. And she joins us to explore what this actually looks like, how to design work, and what gets done next, building culture, structure, connection that holds up as everything else shifts. So, Trellis, welcome to the platform. Good to have you on again. I think this is number 3, right?
Maybe 2 or 3, yeah. But happy to be here.
Okay.
Thanks, Griff.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure this is me and you the second time. I think you had one with Michael.
Okay.
Maybe you forgot
Yeah.
that one.
So then 3.
Maybe that one wasn't as memorable,
Yeah. So am I your highest recurring guest at this point?
As memory serves.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
So, Trellis, I know you and I talked about a little bit of like setting the stage with this conversation, a little bit of like your background. Are you cool with me as we're like sharing together? Can I share a little bit of like the esteem that you bring to this conversation? Why you've kind of earned the right to discuss this stuff? Because I think it's important. I mean, you've done a lot of really cool things. So, Trellis, your career, 25 plus years, but who's counting, of HR, talent, learning, leadership, and organizational effectiveness experience across organizations in the Fortune 500, high growth environments, Coca-Cola, Salesforce, McKesson, Pax8. I know you're also the CEO of 2 of your own ventures, Nova Health Labs, which is a digital health startup focused on optimizing communication and care delivery in oncology, as well as you run TR Ellis Group, your own advisory and consulting practice where much of workforce transformation and leadership work lives. So not only those things, but you also are an author. You're an author.
I am an author.
Of the book Work
Rewritten.
This is a signed copy. Sorry, not everyone can have a signed copy. You got to be in the author's inner circle to get one of those.
Yeah. You got to be in the inner circle.
So I'm sorry for embarrassing you a little bit, but I just wanted to share all that with our audience because just of how much experience you bring to the table in this space. And I want to start this question maybe like not in the lens or the frame of our conversation more at large around org design and work design, but more like what got you into this world and then what kept you in this world?
Yeah, great question. Thanks, Griff. I'm happy to be here with you. You and I always have such great conversations. So anytime I can chop it up with you, it's always going to be a good time, folks. We'll get to some really important, impactful stuff, but hopefully we'll have a little bit of fun too. When you say it like that, I've been doing this for like a long time, and I've done, a lot of things over the course of my career. I think for me, I've always been fascinated by like human behavior, what makes people tick, how does work get done in an organization. And so starting my career early in learning was probably the first of the sort of people domains that I started working in. And just being able to really, back then, sort of my professional mission statement was helping individuals and organizations succeed. So really, what I wanted to do was help folks get better at the work that they do and thereby help organizations sort of perform better for everybody in the organization. So that really has been, I think, the through line of my career, whether I'm thinking about what we're doing in cancer care with Nova and all of the work that I've done sort of in companies and with companies. That's what I was trying to do with the book, right? Just sharing some of my wisdom and experiences around this work to hopefully share something impactful with someone else that they may be able to learn from and be better at their job or at their work. So I think that's been the through line for me. It's really about how do I help individuals and organizations succeed.
That's pretty cool. Well, I will say, having been on the receiving side of your generosity many, many times, it's a great place to be, and I know the world's a better place for it.
Thanks. Thank you.
So let's kind of dive into the topic du jour, if we will.
All right.
Work design, org design in the world of what's next. Not everyone in our audience knows exactly. I mean, I'm sure we've all heard the term organizational design. For maybe the uninitiated in doing that type of work, What
Yeah.
what what are some of the big threads or the big things that go into the world of organizational design and sort of make up the like foundation of what that work is all about?
Yeah, it's it's not something that you hear a lot about. You're starting to hear more about it now, but like back in like the early 2000s, if you were in any of the HR domain, so to speak, you had to have some foundational knowledge of really how does work get done. It's less about structure and what the org chart looks like, and it's more about how does the work flow through the organization, and how do you design that work in a way that you can then step back from it and say, okay, now what tools do we need to have in place to sort of help that workflow better, more efficiently, less friction? What are the roles and skills that are required to get that work done? But really being able to start from an outcomes perspective, which as we get into it, I think is sort of the step that's missing right now as we're sort of looking at where we are in this human and AI era. But it really is about what outcomes is the organization trying to achieve, and then how does work flow through? How do you design work to flow through the organization to achieve those outcomes? So simply
Okay,
stated, that's really what it is.
feels pretty important
Yeah.
compared to what's going on in the world today, or I guess in
Yes.
lieu of what's going on in the world today,
Yeah.
in the world of work. Um,
Yeah.
so maybe one last kind of like I hate to say historical question here, but I guess
Yeah.
maybe to put this in the lens of the experience that you've been able to accumulate over your career. You've seen a lot of transformations. You've seen
Yeah.
technology shift and manifest in really big ways. I'm sure over
Yeah.
the course of your career and how that's been in a lot of ways net positive. I
Yeah.
imagine, obviously some ways where there's been some downsides or some ripple effects that are unintended, maybe at best.
Yeah.
Um, how does the transformation of today compare? Like, what are some of the things you see today and how people are responding, reacting, how companies are
Yeah.
responding, reacting that feel similar to some of the similar transformations of the past? And then what maybe feels net new or unique?
Yeah, I think when you think about technology transformation or technology enabled transformations, I think it's pretty much the same, just a little bit more accelerated now in that we are just always fascinated with shiny new tools.
Hmm.
And I liken it to if you're going to redesign your house, right? You're not interested in tearing the whole house down, you're just trying to redesign some rooms. But before you do any of the redesign, you go out and buy that brand new stainless steel two-door smart refrigerator, right? Only to put it in the kitchen and realize you can't open the left door because it like bumps up against the countertop or something ridiculous like that. So these design failures that people experience, like when they're renovating their homes, it's the same thing we've been doing for decades in the world of sort of org transformation. Rather than stepping back and sort of thinking about the work and again how it flows through the organization, how we measure it, how we monitor it, who's involved, who's doing the work, how do we pay those people, how do we manage and sort of track their performance, we go out and grab the latest, shiniest tool. I think if you're talking about cultural transformation inside of organizations, I think it's similar. It's new frameworks, new processes, new tools. We gravitate towards those things, whatever the big consulting firms are telling us is the next greatest thing. We go out and we grab that, implement it only to find out, similarly to what we're finding out today, it doesn't always work that way. I think one of the things that we often have missed, regardless of the type of transformation that I've been a part of over the last, 20 years or so, we underestimate clarity, trust, and transparency. We
Mhm.
underestimate what it's going to take to actually get people to do things differently than the way that they do them today. We can have the burning platform, we can have all of the ROI and benefit analyses that tell us that this is the way that we need to move in the organization, but somehow or another we're still missing largely on, I think, clarity, trust, and transparency. And until you have an organization where it's all agents, AI agents, you still got to work with people. And so we need to, I think, really value what it's going to take to truly transform organizations, so we're not in these situations where we make all of the investments, then only have to dial back, or we end up not realizing the benefits that we thought we were going to realize, just because people weren't really understanding what was happening, why it was happening. They didn't feel bought into the transformation. So the people side, I think, of change and transformation, we still continue to kind of undervalue and
Mm.
underestimate.
Yeah, I guess follow up question is like why do you think that is? Like why do you think we continue to find
It's
us fall
harder.
prey? Because I guess one of the things that
Yeah.
comes to mind for me is like I don't think any like leader of an
Yeah.
organization like
Yeah.
sets out and they're like, hey, I'm going to use this transformation to like totally erode the trust
Right.
of my organization by implementing this new technology.
Yeah.
Like it
Yeah.
obviously is
No,
like
you're
that's kind
right.
of like hyperbolic, but
Yeah.
that's
That's
not
not the
what.
intention.
So like and but there are these history lessons of the past that have showed us a lot of these transformations and how that's happened. Like I guess not to put you on the spot of this, but like why do you think we continue to find ourselves under investing or undervaluing all those pieces?
It's harder,
Mm,
right? Progress feels like procuring technology, slapping it in, turning it on, sending people to some training so that they generally know how to use it. That's easier by comparison than actually getting people to accept new norms, do work differently. And a lot of times, like what we're finding now, it's not necessarily on the employees or the leaders always. It's a situation where employees understand probably faster than leaders may in the C-suite at 70,000 feet whether or not something even has a chance of working. And we'll get to this later. This is my whole sort of we haven't earned the right to go this fast thing that I'm always saying, is because if you haven't redesigned the work, if you don't know essentially sort of what's changing and how it's changing, just putting in a new piece of technology isn't going to sort of get you the types of results that you can get. Not long term. You may recognize or realize some short term benefits from it, but longer term, it's not going to achieve the outcomes that we set out. So the human side of change is a lot harder. It's a lot more complex. It may take a little bit longer. And I'm not advocating for slowing things down to a crawl, but I do think one of the reasons why maybe we continue to underestimate some of the resistance and some of the people side of change is just because it is more difficult. It is more
mm,
difficult.
yeah, story of our lives, I guess.
That's yeah, story of our life. But it doesn't mean we don't do it, right? We can do hard things, and so I think it has to be a priority. It has to be a priority from the top. It can't just be efficiency at any cost. Cost savings at any cost. Um, you know, you're going to buy that refrigerator twice, right?
Yeah.
Or you're going to have to cut your cabinet, and so you're going to spend the money somewhere, right?
Mm.
Let's try and be smarter about it, rather than just sort of that performative. Hey, we're doing something new.
Yeah, I want to double back to what you just said a second ago, and it's one of the lines when reading your book that kind of did stop me in my tracks
Yeah,
of like as organizations. I took it more broadly to be like as a society, we haven't earned the right to go this
yeah,
fast with
yeah,
technological adoption and acceleration. I guess one of the things I'd be curious to get your thoughts on is like, why is that the case? Why have we not
yeah,
earned the right? And
yeah,
then the follow up is like, well, how do we earn
yeah,
that right?
yeah.
As all of us build out our organizations, and I think most people will see an organization or organizational structure in the future that still has lots of human components to it, lots of people in seats doing work. Why are we not earning the right? Why haven't we earned the right? And then how do we? How do we?
I think the sort of the impetus for the book for me when I wrote it last year was we were seeing layoffs in the tens of thousands, right? Just happening, every other month. Some company was laying off 5,000, 10,000 employees. A lot of those folks were Black women. And so when I started to dig into the research, I was like, I know what it takes to like do like work design and job analysis and I'm not hearing anything about any of that kind of work. I'm just hearing about efficiency, automation, procuring new AI tools. And these are people's lives that we're impacting. And again, I'm not anti-technology. I'm not, I got an AI startup, right? So I understand that, but we just haven't earned the right to go this fast. There is work upstream that has been skipped. And so what that looks like in practice is you lay off 10,000 people, but you have to call 5,000 of them back, right? Or you lay off 10,000 people, you get a little bit of, a little bit of a bump in your earnings. But then, you invested all that money only to have to dial back your AI adoption or your AI implementation strategy because you're not seeing the shift in the P&L like you thought you might. So, the research bears it out with, I think Gardner came out, fewer than 30% of AI implementations are failing or going to be dialed back in 2027. I think some studies have it at 90% failure rate, failure meaning not achieving the desired outcomes or the expected outcomes. So obviously we haven't earned the right to go this fast. We missed that upstream work of what are the outcomes. And so, if you sort of ask me what do we do to fix it, I think you start with outcomes. Like what is it that we're ultimately trying to achieve, right? And then from outcomes, you got to go redesign the work because all of the work today, most of the work today in organizations were designed to be done by humans alone for the most part. So now if you're saying 30-40% of a particular role or function can be done with artificial intelligence, you have to relook at the work and the workflows. Like, where does a human end? Where does the AI start? How do they work together and collaborate? Who owns the decision? If a mistake gets made, who owns that? How do you think about escalation? So there are all of these things that you look at when you're doing work design. How does it flow into the next department or the next, team that has to coordinate with that team? All of that has to be looked at again. And what we were doing instead was just sort of looking at the research and going, okay, well, entire departments, most of what they do can be automated. So let's just do that. And so I think, we just got to this place where you got to start with the outcomes. Two, then you start to look at, okay, how do we redesign this work? What work stays and what work goes, right? Some work we're doing, we may not even need to be doing, right? So that's kind of the first pass. What stays, what goes, and then of what stays, then how do we sort of apply AI? How do we implement AI to make more efficient the things that actually need to stay, as opposed to just scaling and accelerating maybe a lot of dysfunction? Because some of the work we haven't even stopped to look at it to see if we need to be doing that work today, right? How does it help our employees? How does it help our customers? And so this is an opportunity for us to really take a look at that and figure those things out. And I think what we've done instead is saying, whether or not we need to update the foundation of this work, let's just figure out how to make it more efficient. And so I think that's some of what's, based on what I'm reading, that's some of what's being felt right now is that, people aren't getting the efficiency and the gains that they thought they were going to get because some of the work that's been automated is unnecessary. Some of it is redundant. And that's because we just skipped that upstream work. Yeah.
There was a lot of awesome stuff in there. I guess
Yeah.
I'm going to ask like a step back question. When you think
Yeah.
about what the org of the future looks like, I'm sure that's like a loaded question, but like if you were to say like there's a couple of telltale signs that when I would see that in action, that to me would be like an organization who is approaching or has gone through parts of this transformation
Yeah.
in a way that has earned the right. Like what would be some things you would see in either the day-to-day or like the operating cadence or how that organization actually goes about what it does?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, one of the frameworks that I'm looking at right now, we have all of these frameworks, strategic planning, strategy execution frameworks, and operating models. I think the big thing now that I'm seeing and that I agree with is that it's going to be important that we have alignment, right, between whatever those outcomes are and how they're defined at the organization level as you move down through the organization. Alignment, I think, is more important now than ever. And how do you kind of wrap some governance around that? Because the thing that AI is quick, right? It's fast. And so as you start to embed it in your workflows, there's not a lot of room for error. Humans move a little bit slower. There's a couple check offs. You may want to go check with Grift around the corner, run something by him. Let's bounce it off the wall, kick it around a while, do all the things to make sure that this is really going to fit together, throwing spaghetti on the wall, seeing if it sticks, all the corporate little things that we say. AI, you don't get that kind of wiggle room. And so the alignment, the governance, I think are going to be really important. So I think those are going to be important for organizations who are trying to do this right. I think, another thing, so alignment is important. I think as we think too about like our performance systems, that's another place where I'm starting to see some challenges is the systems that we use both to monitor and measure human performance, like our goal setting, our annual performance management process, how we set goals for people, how we create individual development plans if you're sort of in the HR space, but even as business leaders, how we measure throughput and quantity and cost and all those things. Those systems also have to be aligned to this new machine human collaboration environment that we're in right now. And if that's not the case, then you just have a lot of fragmentation inside of organizations. So I was reading something a couple days ago that was talking specifically about that point. That again, implementing and embedding AI in your workflows is a little bit easier, but you still need to go back and make sure that the metrics are aligned. And once the metrics are aligned, the systems that monitor and manage and track those metrics have to also be talking to each other. Otherwise, all of that efficiency that you thought you were going to gain, you got to make it up now in administrative reporting because you got silos and fragmentation all over the place. Your performance systems don't talk to each other. And so, so again, it's like, how do we think about this in the design phase? How do we move upstream and have some of those conversations early so that as we're redesigning this, workforce and workplace of the future, we've thought about those things sooner rather than after the fact. Does that make sense?
Totally. Yeah. One of the things that maybe I'm kind of gonna like marry or merge a couple of the ideas you share, like to your point, like AI can move so quick, it can be so fast and be so efficient,
Yeah.
and dare I say, like most of the ways that it's been pitched to us is like, look how fast or look how
Yeah.
duplicative, or it can make 6 grifts. Oh, that's way
Yeah.
too many grifts for the
Right.
world,
Right.
but like it can create this ability to be in so many different places at once.
Yeah.
Um, so I think like perhaps we fall in love with the idea of speed and efficiency, and
Yeah.
that being sort of like the metric of the day, as it were. But I'm almost curious to get your take of like how could we like leverage that speed, that like experimentation, and also kind of go back and like redesign. Like is there a way that you can kind of do both, which is like come back, think about more intentionally designing work in the organization around some of these key principles and around the outcomes you're trying to drive, and then use
Yeah.
the technology to be experimenting and finding where the guardrails should be? Like, what's
Yeah.
the, is
Yeah.
there like an and versus just an either or? I'm not saying you're saying it's either or, but like, if there is
Yeah.
there an and approach?
Yeah, I chuckled a little bit because as you were talking, I thought about the Bolt CEO situation that just came up where he
Mm,
sort of got rid of the entire HR department because they were causing more problems than they were fixing. And my answer was going to be, as I was thinking about this, was that in HR, we have this saying where it's like, we try and help the business understand that sometimes it's necessary to go slow in order to go faster later. But in some circles, that might be perceived as kind of slowing the boat down. I don't think that's the case. I think it really, if there's ever been a use case for initially taking a little bit more time in your pacing and intention in order to go fast later, this might be it, right? So again, it's not slowing it down from the standpoint of stopping it it's sequencing more than anything else, right? It's like step one. I used to tell this to my teenager when he would get ahead of himself. Step one in any context grift always comes before step two. Simple. It's simple. Step one always comes before step two. And so I think that we've just kind of we're at step two and step three. And maybe we didn't take the time to go do step one because it was, a little bit more complex to take a look at the work and ask those questions. But if you had resources that were dedicated to doing that work and doing it, quickly, doing it accurately, then you would have the ability later to go faster. And while everybody else is doubling back to fix it, you're already out ahead of the game. But you have to not be seduced by speed, you know, cuts to the bottom line, and the things that businesses look at operationally to sort of define their level of success. And we all want to work for a profitable company. I'm building one, right? So it's like, I get it, but I think, again, you're going to spend the money one way or the other. So I think this is probably one of the better use cases for, let's take a little bit of time and intention on the front end to do step one, and then we can move on to step two. And so I think the organizations that are having some success right now are the ones that that chose to prioritize how do we really take a look at the work and the outcomes before we start to get into tasks and automation, and how what can be augmented, what can be automated, what do we eliminate altogether, what needs to forever stay in the hands of humans. And so we're starting to look at that. And that brings me to, kind of a term a phrase that I use in the book, bilingual leadership. So if we think about leaders being the levers in organizations that really are going to help make the transformation go, from the people side of things, how do we make sure that we're building capability in leaders so that they speak fluent AI machine logic, good enough, right? You don't have to get under the hood, but you need to know, if the car is running hot. And also, they speak the language that humans understand. Because in this collaborative type of environment that we've got now, it's not just about human AI orchestration, right? The humans are going to do this, the AI is going to do that, and as a leader, I just have to make sure that everybody's doing what they're supposed to do. No, you really have to understand how they speak, right? AI and logic and tasks and automation and workflows, but you still got to build trust and transparency and empathy and psychological safety with people. And as a leader, you're kind of that translation layer. So you got to be able to do both. And so if you're a leader now, your job didn't get simpler, it got more complex. And so, yeah, thinking about that also, I think, as an accelerant to organizations that are going to be able to do it really well, is where they build that mindset and capability in their leaders, that you've got to be able to sort of speak both languages fluently.
Yeah, that's a good answer. I've also been thinking about your step two always coming after step one, and I've been thinking about how I could potentially contrarian that, but I can't come up with anything. You're right. Step one always has to come before step two.
Oh, yeah.
So,
no matter what it is.
Yeah. Well, maybe like a particular population that I think is in the crosshairs of all this is the generation that's coming into work right now. And there's a number of interesting kind of conversations around this. One of the professor out of Wharton, Ethan Mullick, he has this like really cool visual way to describe like the two forces that are eroding at the apprentice model that's been the way human beings have learned for 80,000 years.
Yeah.
It's like, look, like the apprentice model basically worked because you had senior people who needed to offload some of their more mundane tasks to junior people.
Yeah.
And then the junior people would learn about the importance of those tasks, but then they would get more and more of that over time, right? It was beneficial for both parties, and now you're in a world where actually both parties' short-term benefit is to avoid each other or avoid the old model of like the senior people now are like, well, why would I go to a junior person when I can just get this done faster and probably a better quality than maybe like a very junior person or a just starting out person can do. On the junior person side, and I think about myself as like, when I started my career in finance, if someone would told me like, hey, I would have this tool that I could just go put all this information about these companies that we were thinking about investing or giving money to, and it'd be like, hey, spit out like a model that you could just give to your partners and sound relatively smart. That would be really hard not to lean into.
Not to lean in.
And so I don't put a lot of, I don't put no responsibility, but I can understand and empathize how enticing that technology would be, particularly early in your career when you're trying to, make a name and reputation for yourself. So all of that pretext, I guess the question is like, how are you thinking about people who are just coming into the organization in organizational design, and like, what are some like additional things for particularly talent lifecycle teams or people offices to be thinking about or prioritizing to ensure those folks can do great work and build great careers?
I think it's what I just said. So whether you're, I was talking about it in the context of kind of people leaders, but I think if you think about self as leader or leader of self also, I think if you're anybody coming into the workforce today, I think you've also got to be bilingual in terms of sort of understanding enough about AI and technology, but also knowing how to work and collaborate with your peers, your boss, your whomever. And so I think that's going to be one of those things that you'll just need to sort of have. It's sort of like, the internet native generation that came out where, my son, they've never been in a world without Google and without the internet. I think folks that are coming in now, they kind of are going to balance or, straddle that line. But coming behind them very quickly is going to be a group that's, only that's AI native in the workplace. And so I think, you're going to have to think about what that means. And for somebody like me who's extremely curious about technology and sort of what's the next latest greatest thing coming online, I think curiosity is going to be one of those things that will also serve them well. It's like, how can you sort of stay curious about things, and then how can you quickly adapt, and be fluid in terms of what you're getting yourself exposed to, and what you're working with, and how you're getting work done. Roles that are sort of solid static things, that's gone now. Roles are so fluid even right now. If you think about coming into a role, we hire someone for a job, based on a job description or a job profile. And people will tell you today, they get into the job and 3 months in, they're like, well, half the stuff I'm doing isn't in the job description, right? But you have to be able to have a level of adaptability because things are changing so rapidly. And so I think having that skill will also be helpful for them. I think it is tough because one of the things that, when I'm advising businesses around sort of work design, work transformation strategy, one of the questions or one of the areas that we explore is like, is this eroding your talent pipeline? Right? If you think about the most automatable work, it's typically the work that's more junior in the organization. And so if you get rid of that work, then where are the people that you're trying to give additional experiences to so they can be the leaders of the organization tomorrow? If you've just essentially, eroded sort of the talent pipeline, you've eroded those developmental opportunities because now all of that work can be automated or augmented significantly. What does that mean for your organization tomorrow? And are we being a little bit too short-sighted? So it really, it has to be, I think they're going to have to be really intentional about the kinds of organizations maybe that they want to go and work for, because I think for me some of this does boil down to, I'm going to sound maybe a little woo woo or hokey right here, Griff, so hold
Go
on.
for it. Go for it.
If all the work is automated, what are we doing? Are we just watching Netflix all day? I mean, what are the humans doing? So until you can show me a world where AI is doing all of the work, but humans are still thriving and surviving and happy, and what are we doing? So if we're going to be around and we have to share this world and share work, then some organizations are going to have to be courageous and just decide that they're going to take a balanced approach, and not balanced 50-50, but a balanced approach to how they think about leveraging technology, augmenting work, and what that means for their human workforce, right? If your goal as a CEO is that one day you're the only human walking through the building and everything else is pretty much automated, like where did those 50,000 people go exactly? Right? I know that's extreme, but but on some level, I think we're going to have some bold leaders that really, and you and I've had this conversation, right? Some bold leaders that stand up and say, there is there's a strategy that leans too heavily to AI or any technology and not enough toward people. That doesn't work. And likewise, there's a strategy that leans too heavily towards people and doesn't embrace technology and what it can do. And that's also not great. And so the organizations, not necessarily even the leaders, but I think the organizations that survive and thrive are going to be the ones who consider that we're not all sitting around watching Netflix.
Yeah. One of the things that's really interesting, I think, of the way you framed all this is like, I liken it back to the idea of like skills-based career development.
Yeah.
It's like that's been around for so long, but maybe this is like the official rise of skills-based development or skills-based
Yeah. Yeah.
um, uh, organizations, where it's like
Yeah.
it's much more important to think about the things that you're able to do versus the roles that you inhabit.
That's right.
I think
And then having a level of agility with them too, right? Like being able to learn quickly and use this, but then when things are changing and adapting, how quickly are you able to adapt and sort of take your skills and experiences and evolve them to whatever the new environment requires. So that idea of lifelong learner that we talked about again, 20 years ago or whatever, all those things are sort of, they've been around, but I think this use case right now that we're experiencing is really where that rubber is meeting the road, because you have to be able to quickly learn new things, apply those things, figure out what's working, what's not. The floor is shifting underneath our feet, and so leaders, employees, all of us have to just be better at adaptation.
yeah. I think this conversation has ebbed and flowed from optimism to pessimism and everything in between. Maybe
Yeah, yeah,
if we ended on a bit of an upswing or an uptone,
yeah.
what out there gives you hope that like we will land this plane as organizations, as people, frankly, as like a society? What gives you hope?
Yeah. Well, that is a big question. Um, my hope is that we will. Um, on some level, we always have, right? If you look 100 years back to now, I mean, things change. They get better. They get worse. They seem to get more worse or worser. Um, but somewhere along the way, we figure out how to do things in ways that you know that keep us somewhat on the rails. Now, I understand the world that we're living in right now. And there are days where, me personally, I don't have a lot of hope. I want to go punch a wall or something or other, or turn off the TV and just scream for 2 hours. Um, I get it. But, when I think about, you know, my mom, my grandmother, my great grand, it's like all of us can look back and think about times where we thought, hey, they probably thought that was as bad as it could get. Similar to the way a lot of people think right now. This is like crazy. This is as bad as it can get. But somehow not giving in to that despair, I think, is what helps us to move forward. Like AI is not the boogeyman under the bed, right? And it still needs us in a lot of ways today to work with the technology. And so I think, very, smart people, very well-intentioned people, people who, um, they're people on both sides of the issue. Those, again, who would lean too heavily towards technology, those that are trying to keep us ethically safe. And so I think, we just have to remember that. I think anytime you get too despondent, go hang out with some different people, right? Anytime my friends that are like the world is burning down, anytime they start to like freak me out, I go find the people that are hugging trees, right? So have a lot of different types of people in your network, because you can find, what you need at whatever particular time as you sort of go along. So I think that's what gives me hope, is that there are people working on all sides of this issue. And so you just have to be open and intentional to learning and thinking about it in new ways. And so that curiosity is important, and not just sort of getting mired in, AI is not going to, eat us. I saw a meme the other day. It's like AI is eating our this, that, or the third. Yeah, no.
I feel like it's maybe a great place to end the conversation, where similar to where we started, of this idea of like embracing and leveraging curiosity, maybe
Yeah,
even in times where it feels like it's really hard to lean into it. And even, to your point, like if you're on
yeah,
maybe more of the pessimistic or you're on the doomsday side, like find folks who
yeah.
are
Oh,
optimistic
God.
and
Yeah,
learn like
yeah.
why they're
That's
so
right.
excited about it, as opposed to just
Yeah,
immediately judge that they're
yeah,
wrong. what is it
Yeah.
that's giving them so much hope and optimism,
Yeah.
and use the
Yeah.
curiosity both of your own
Yeah.
mind, but of leveraging other perspectives.
Yeah, because I think that's the antithesis to sort of fear, right? People who are afraid and anxious about what does this mean for the world? What is this? They're bad actors that are trying to do all sorts of things. Again, I think you just have to get more knowledge, be more curious, be more informed, go hang out with people who are sort of approaching it from a different lens and see what's possible, and not just sort of accept the status quo, or you know maybe what you're hearing most about in the research and in all the papers today. I think it's just important to just sort of expand our thinking when we're afraid.
I can always count on conversations you and I have that start very specific and tactical, eventually get
Oh
to
God.
societal levels. And,
Yes.
but I hope people will appreciate that, because I feel like we covered a
I do
lot of
too.
ground.
I do too. At the end of the day, we focus so much on like work, and it's important, but it's so much a part of our identity. And one of the things that I've been working on probably for the last year or so is like, how do I integrate like who I am as a human being with the work that I do, so that I don't constantly feel like the only thing of value I have to contribute or say is something that's related to my domain expertise. And I think that's another piece of it. I think if we approach each other kind of as just, fellow humans on the planet, that helps with a lot of it. And so I always enjoy the conversations with you, because it's amazing we haven't like solved world peace by now, the conversations that we have. We've certainly talked about ways to do it, but yeah.
Yeah. The solution is somewhere amidst
It's
all of this
somewhere in
dialogue we've
there.
had.
Yeah. Yeah. So thank you so much as always. It's always great to chat
Yeah.
with you and
Well,
chop
what
it
a
up a little
pleasure.
bit.
What a pleasure. Again, I always appreciate our conversations.
Yeah.
Head in the heart oriented, both. It's not an
Yes.
either or, it's an and when you get
That's
together. And I really do appreciate all the work you're doing, but then frankly, just appreciate your friendship. Thanks for being in
Absolutely.
our ecosystem, but I
Yeah.
guess selfishly, thank you for being such an awesome friend over the
Yeah.
years.
Thanks, Griff.
All right. Well, we'll see you out, but hopefully this will be not the last time we have Trellis on the platform. What a great conversation. Really enjoyed that one. Personally, hopefully you all took a lot out of it. I will just make a selfish plug. Great read here. So we'll have the link to Trellis's book in the description or in the show notes. You can find all of our episodes of Navigating Now at thaudium.com/live. You can also find them all on our YouTube channel. So subscribe to that to get all the updates on new content that we're sharing. We'll be back again, as we always are, next Thursday live at 3 p.m. Central with a really awesome conversation. We're gonna focus in on some of the big things we took away from attending this year's ATD Association for Talent Development's conference in Los Angeles. So tune in for that, episode 281. Thank you for joining